The great chamber of the Galactic Assembly stretched upward into darkness. Park stood in the center of the circular floor, looking up at the hundreds of alien representatives seated in rings around him. Some had scales, others had metal bodies, and a few looked like floating crystals that hummed with light. All of them were staring down at the humans. Wore a simple black suit. Behind him stood Colonel in her military uniform and Dr. Sora carrying a data tablet. They were the only three humans in a room filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Could feel the weight of their stares, but his face remained calm. "The vote is complete," announced the speaker, a tall crystalline being called its voice echoed like wind through caves. "The Galactic Assembly has reviewed humanity's petition for full membership status." Had expected this moment for months. Humanity had been part of the Assembly for 200 years, but only as a probationary member. They could trade goods and send messages, but they could not vote on laws. They could not expand beyond their two solar systems. They could not build ships that traveled too far or carried too many weapons. The other species said it was for everyone's safety. They said humans were too young, too emotional, too dangerous. Every 50 years, humanity could ask again for full membership. Every time, the answer was the same. But this time felt different. The galaxy was changing. 3 new species had joined as full members in the past decade. Surely humanity's time had come. After careful consideration, the speaker continued, the Assembly votes to deny humanity's petition for full membership. The words hit like a physical blow. Heard take a sharp breath behind him. He kept his face blank, waiting. Furthermore, the speaker said, the Assembly has concerns about humanity's recent activities. Your colony on the world you call Eden 7 has exceeded the population limits agreed upon in the probationary treaty. Your exploration fleet has ventured into regions marked as restricted. We stayed within our rights under the treaty, said calmly. The population growth on Eden 7 was natural. The exploration zones were not clearly marked. Nevertheless, the speaker's crystal body flashed bright red. The Assembly has voted. Humanity must abandon the Eden 7 colony within 2 standard years. Your deep space exploration fleet must be dismantled within 1 year. These measures are necessary to maintain galactic peace. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some aliens nodded their various heads or equivalent body parts. Others remained silent, watching. Turned slightly to look at, she gave him a small nod. He glanced at Sora, who touched her tablet twice. The signal, everything was ready. He turned back to face the speaker and the assembled galaxy. I have a question, said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the massive chamber. In the past 2 centuries, how many wars has humanity started? The speaker's crystals flickered. That is not relevant to. 0, continued. How many times has humanity broken galactic law? The Assembly does not. 0, said again. How many trade agreements has humanity violated? How many diplomatic incidents have we caused? How many times have we threatened another species? The chamber grew very quiet. Your species has a history of violence on a mechanical voice spoke. It came from a being that was half machine and half something else. War, genocide, destruction. This is documented. Yes, said, among ourselves. Thousands of years ago, we learned from those mistakes. We grew, we changed. But you judge us not by what we do now, but by what our ancestors did before we even reached space. It is a pattern, another alien said, this one covered in thick purple fur. Species do not change their nature. Then explain this. Sora stepped forward, her voice sharp. In 200 years of contact with you, we have followed every rule. We have contributed to galactic science, art, and culture. We have saved 12 ships from other species when they had accidents near our space, and yet you punish us for crimes we have not committed. The decision is made, the speaker said. Humanity remains on probation. The colony must be abandoned. The fleet must be dismantled. Looked around the chamber one more time. He saw fear in some alien faces. He saw contempt in others. He saw cold calculation in the rest. These beings did not see humans as partners. They saw them as children at best and threats at worst. He thought of the millions of people on Eden 7, families who had built homes, grown crops, created a new world. He thought of the exploration fleet, the brave crews who mapped unknown stars and searched for new wonders. He thought of Earth, waiting for news, hoping that finally they would be treated as equals. No, said simply. The speaker's crystals turned bright orange. Excuse me. Humanity withdraws from this assembly, said clearly. We withdraw from all associated treaties, agreements, and obligations, effective immediately. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens shouted in hundreds of languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up. You cannot do this. The speaker's voice rose above the chaos. You will be isolated, cut off from galactic trade and protection. We can and we have, said. He turned to leave and saw her falling into step beside him. You will regret this decision, the representative called out. You doom your species to stagnation. Paused at the exit, he looked back one last time. Maybe, he said, but we would rather stand alone in the darkness than kneel in your light. The three humans walked through the tall doorway. Behind them, the galactic assembly descended into chaos. Aliens argued and shouted. Some demanded they send security to stop the humans. Others called for economic sanctions. A few, a very small few, sat in silence, wondering what they had just witnessed. Az and Sara walked down the long corridor toward their ship. None of them spoke. They did not need to. They had made their choice, and behind them, humanity had made its choice too. The petition for membership had been a test, one final attempt to join the galaxy as equals. The galaxy had given its answer. Now humanity would give its own. Their footsteps echoed in the empty hallway, and somewhere far above them, in the great chamber, the aliens were still arguing about what it meant when humanity simply walked away. The transmission from Earth came through crystal clear. President Menu sat at his desk in Geneva, the seat of the United Earth government. Behind him, the flags of every nation hung in rows. His face was tired, but his eyes were bright with determination. People of Earth, he began. Today, our representatives walked out of the Galactic Assembly. This was not a decision made in anger or haste. For months, the nations of Earth have discussed what we would do if the galaxy rejected us again. We agreed, all of us, that we would not accept another century of being treated as children. On Eden 7, farmers and engineers gathered in the central plaza to watch the broadcast. In orbit around Earth, the crews of 100 ships stopped their work to listen. On Mars, in the underground cities, families held hands as they watched their president speak. The assembly wanted us to abandon Eden 7, Menu continued. They wanted us to destroy our exploration fleet. They wanted us to accept that we are lesser beings, worthy only of staying in our small corner of space. We have a different answer. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not destroy our ships. We will stand on our own. The broadcast ended with simple words that would echo across human space for years to come. We asked for a seat at their table. They said no, so we will build our own table. Within hours, the galaxy began to react. They were the first. Their crystal ships appeared at the edge of human space, not with weapons but with a blockade. No ships in or out. They announced that humanity would be cut off from galactic trade until they agreed to assembly terms. They are testing us, said. She stood in the command center on the military station Guardian 1, watching the ships on the display. They think we need them more than they need us. Do we? Asked Commander, the station's captain. Let's find out, said with a thin smile. The answer came faster than anyone expected. Within a week, 12 other species sent secret messages to Earth. They wanted to keep trading, even if it meant going against the Assembly's wishes. Humanity had become the galaxy's leading source of entertainment media, medical technology, and synthetic materials. The Assembly could order a blockade, but they could not make the galaxy's merchants obey. The blockade lasted exactly 9 days before the first alien ship slipped through, loaded with rare metals to trade for human medicines. Within a month, the blockade was gone. They pretended it had never existed. But they were different. They were a hive-mind species that acted as one. They sent an official message to Earth. Humanity's rejection of Assembly authority is noted. Corrective measures are being considered. That sounds like a threat, Sora said. She was back on Earth now, working in the office. Don't make empty statements. Let them threaten, Minyu said. We are not backing down. Yet it was not the Assembly's threats that changed everything. It was a discovery far from Earth, in a region of space humans were not supposed to explore. Captain Lee commanded the exploration ship Endeavor. The ship was 3 months into a long-range mission when they detected something strange. Energy readings that did not match any known technology. They were coming from a small, dead moon orbiting a brown dwarf star. Should we investigate? Asked Lieutenant Bora Yang, the science officer. We are not supposed to be in this sector. Looked at the readings on his screen. They had left the Assembly. The old rules did not apply anymore. We investigate, he said. What they found changed everything. On the surface of the dead moon was a structure. It was massive, built from materials that seemed to shift colors in the light. Around it were smaller structures, all connected by lines of energy that pulsed with a soft blue glow. It's a gate, Bora said, her voice filled with wonder. A faster-than-light gate, but the technology is far beyond what the Assembly uses. They explored the structure carefully. Inside, they found controls and data systems. Most of it was damaged or inactive, but some parts still worked. The records they recovered were fragmentary, but the story they told was stunning. Thousands of years ago, before the current Galactic Assembly existed, an ancient civilization had built a network of these gates. They connected the entire galaxy, allowing instant travel between distant stars. But the gates had been shut down, sealed away, hidden. Why would someone hide this? Wondered. Dr. Sora had the answer when she reviewed the data back on Earth. She stood before a meeting of Earth's leadership, her face pale. The Assembly's founding species found these gates after the ancient civilization collapsed, she explained. They could have reactivated them. They could have shared this technology with the entire galaxy, but they did not. Why not? Minyu asked, though he was beginning to understand. Because the gates would have eliminated their advantage. They all use slower FTL technology. Their power comes from controlling the major trade routes and communication lines. If everyone had access to these gates, they would lose that control. The room fell silent as the truth sank in. The Assembly had not kept humanity down because humans were dangerous. They had kept humanity down because they feared what humans might discover, what any species might discover if given freedom to explore. They kept entire civilizations in the dark, said quietly. They decided who could grow and who had to stay small, all to keep their power. We need to activate these gates, Minyu said. If we can use them, we can travel anywhere in the galaxy. The Assembly cannot stop us. It will be seen as an act of war, a general warned. Then we will be at war, Minyu said. We did not choose this path. The Assembly chose it when they decided they were our masters. Now we show them the truth. They are not our masters. No one is. The message came 3 weeks later, transmitted on all frequencies to ensure humanity received it. The Galactic Assembly had made its decision. An enforcement fleet of 5,000 ships was being assembled. Their mission, to force humanity back into compliance. The message gave humanity 60 days to surrender the gate technology, abandon Eden 7, and accept renewed probationary status. If humanity refused, the fleet would restore order. Received the message in his office on Earth. He read it twice, then composed his response. It was short. Come if you dare, but know this, we are not alone anymore. It was not a bluff. In the weeks since the Gate discovery, human ships had begun making contact with other species beyond assembly space. Isolated civilizations that had been deemed not ready by the assembly. Species that had been forbidden to advance, just like humanity. And they were all very interested in talking about freedom. Engineer Shin had not slept in 36 hours. Her eyes were red and her hands shook slightly from too much coffee, but she could not stop smiling. Before her, floating in a holographic display, was the solution to a puzzle 10,000 years old. It works because of neural patterns, she explained to the gathered scientists and military officers. The ancient gates need a specific kind of brain activity to activate. The assembly species, their minds do not work the right way. They are too rigid, too structured. But human minds, we are flexible, creative, chaotic. So they physically cannot use these gates? Admiral asked. He was the head of Earth's defense fleet, a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. Not without us, confirmed. That is why they sealed the gates instead of destroying them. They knew someday they might need them, but they also knew they could not operate them alone. They buried the network and hoped no one would find it. But we did, Sora said softly, and now we can go anywhere. The first gate activation happened 3 days later. Stood at the controls, her hands hovering over the interface. The gate structure hummed with power, the ancient materials coming alive after of sleep. Around her, the Endeavor and 5 other human ships waited. Activating, said. Her fingers moved across the controls, her mind linking with the gate systems in ways she did not fully understand but somehow knew were right. The gate blazed with light. A circle of pure energy formed in the center, showing a window to another place. Through it, they could see a different star system, thousands of light years away. It is stable, Bora reported from the Endeavor. Energy readings are normal. The gate is fully functional. Did not hesitate, take us through. The Endeavor moved forward and slipped through the gate. For a moment, reality seemed to stretch and bend. Then they were through, emerging in a star system no human had ever seen. The journey that would have taken months using conventional FTL technology had taken seconds. It works, said, and his crew cheered. Within weeks, humanity had activated 17 gates. They formed a network across the galaxy, connecting human space to distant regions. And in those distant regions, they found what they were looking for. They were a peaceful species with 6 limbs and soft fur. They lived on 3 worlds in a cluster of stars far from assembly space. Their technology was old and worn. Their ships barely worked. They greeted the human vessels with caution and wonder. You are from the assembly, the leader asked through translation devices. No, said, he had traveled to meet them personally. We left the assembly, we want to offer you something. Knowledge, technology, freedom. They were suspicious at first. The assembly had visited them once 50 years ago. The assembly had tested them, judged them not ready, and forbidden them from developing certain technologies. Since then, they had been stuck, unable to advance. Why would you help us? The leader asked. Because the same thing was done to us, explained. The assembly keeps species small and weak so they stay in power. We are offering a different path. Join us. Learn from us. Help us build something new. They were the first. Then came a reptilian species that had been assembly contact entirely. Then who lived in ocean worlds and had barely begun to explore space. Then and dozens more. Each species had the same story. The assembly had found them, judged them, and either kept them dependent or ignored them completely. Each one was shocked to learn about the gate network. Each one wanted to join what humanity was building. We should call it something, suggested during a strategy meeting. Around her sat representatives from humanity and 15 other species. A coalition, an alliance. The Free Worlds Coalition, Sora offered, for species who choose their own path. The name stuck. Within 3 months, 40 species had joined. They did not have the military power of the Assembly. Their ships were older and their weapons less advanced. But they had numbers, they had the gate network, and they had something else. They were angry. For centuries, the Assembly had decided who could grow and who could not. They had kept entire civilizations trapped in the dark, unable to reach their potential. They had claimed it was for peace, for stability, for the good of all. But the truth was simpler. They did it to stay in power. "We do not want war," told the assembled representatives. "But we will not accept slavery either. If the Assembly wants to force us back into submission, they will find we are not alone anymore." The Assembly's response was swift. The enforcement fleet began moving toward human space. 5,000 ships, the largest military force assembled in 300 years. Leading them was Unit 447, a commander with a perfect battle record. "The human species and their allies will stand down," this message said. "The gate network will be surrendered, order will be restored, resistance will be met with overwhelming force." Admiral watched the fleet approach on the tactical display. 5,000 ships versus the 2,000 vessels the Free Worlds had managed to gather. The numbers were not good. "Can we win?" President Minu asked. Was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. "In a straight fight, no, but whoever said we would fight fair?" The Free World's forces gathered at the Nexus Point, a star system where 7 gates intersected. It was the heart of the network, the place from which you could reach anywhere. It was also where the Assembly would strike first. Stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiant, watching the enemy fleet approach. Beside her, commanded the Endeavor. Around them, ships from 40 different species waited. Some were barely more than cargo vessels with weapons attached. Others were sleek warships that had been hidden from the Assembly for years. "They outnumber us 2-1, said quietly. "True," agreed. "But they have never fought an enemy that can be everywhere at once." The Assembly fleet entered the system in standard formation. 5,000 ships moving together, a display of overwhelming power meant to force immediate surrender. "Send the message," ordered. The message went out on all frequencies. It was simple. "We are the Free Worlds Coalition. We do not seek war. We seek only the right to exist as free beings. Turn back or face the consequences." This response came quickly. "You have 10 minutes to surrender. After that, we will open fire." "Then I guess we fight," said. She looked at who nodded. She looked at the representatives from the other species, all of whom signaled their readiness. "All ships," said calmly, "execute Plan Liberty." And across the Nexus Point, the gates flared to life. The enforcement fleet expected a battle. They expected the Free World's forces to form defensive lines, to fight with desperation, to be crushed under superior numbers. What they got instead was chaos. 300 Free World ships suddenly vanished. They did not retreat or hide. They simply disappeared, jumping through the gates to other systems. Before they could react, those same ships appeared behind the Assembly formation, firing on the rear vessels. "All ships turn and engage," they ordered. The Assembly fleet began to turn. Then another 400 Free World ships vanished and reappeared on the Assembly's left flank. Then another group hit the right. The battle space that should have been simple and straightforward became a nightmare of ships appearing and disappearing, attacking from all sides at once. "They are using the gates as tactical weapons," they realized. "They can move anywhere in seconds." The Assembly fleet was built for traditional warfare. Their ships were powerful and their formations strong, but they were designed to fight enemies who stayed in one place. The Free Worlds did not stay in one place. They hit hard, jumped away before the Assembly could respond, and appeared somewhere else entirely. commanded his squadron through 4 different systems in 10 minutes. They would appear, fire missiles at enemy ships, and vanish before the return fire arrived. Each time they jumped, they regrouped with other free world's vessels and struck a new target. "This is not about winning," reminded his crew. "This is about showing them they cannot win either." On the Defiant, coordinated the entire battle. Before her, holographic displays showed ships moving through dozens of star systems simultaneously. The free worlds were fighting in 7 different locations at once, using the gates to create a battle space the assembly could not control. "Casualty report," she asked. 26 ships lost, reported, but we have damaged or destroyed over 300 assembly vessels. Not bad considering the odds, but the assembly still had over 4,000 operational ships. The free worlds had less than 2,000. This stalemate could not last forever. "They are adapting," Admiral warned from his flagship. "They are splitting their fleet into smaller groups. If they can match our mobility, we lose our advantage." Had expected this. The assembly commanders were not fools. They would learn, they would adjust, and eventually raw numbers would win. "Then we change the game," she said. That night, while the fleets regrouped and rested, a different kind of weapon was being prepared. Dr. Han worked in a small office on Earth, putting together something more dangerous than any missile or warship. Was a sociologist, not a soldier. She studied how societies worked, how information spread, how civilizations changed. And she had an idea that terrified her even as she built it. "Are you sure about this?" Sora asked. She had come to review's work. "No," admitted, "but I do not see another choice. The assembly has power because of secrecy and control. What if we take that away?" What had created was an information bomb. It contained every secret the assembly had kept for thousands of years, the locations of hidden gates, the records of species they had suppressed, the truth about how the founding races had kept themselves in power, technical data that had been restricted, historical records that had been erased. "Everything. If we broadcast this, there is no going back," Sora said. "The entire galaxy will know what the assembly did." "Good," said quietly, "let them know." The debate in Earth's government was fierce. Some argued that releasing the information would make the assembly fight harder, become more desperate. Others worried about what would happen if the galactic order collapsed completely. "We are already at war," President Minu said finally. "And we are losing. Not today, not this month, but eventually. The assembly has more ships, more resources. Unless something changes, they will grind us down. This information, it is a weapon we can only use once, but it might be the weapon that wins." The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would broadcast everything. 3 days later, as the fleets prepared for another engagement, uploaded her data bomb to every communication satellite humanity controlled. From there, it spread through the gate network. Within hours, it had reached every major system in the galaxy. The broadcast could not be stopped or blocked. It repeated itself on every frequency, in every known language. Automated systems caught it and spread it further. Within a day, 1 trillion beings across the galaxy had access to information that had been hidden for. The effect was immediate and devastating. On the consensus crystals that guided their civilization began to show cracks. The younger, those who had never questioned their leaders, learned that their entire society was built on lies. They began to demand answers. The hive mind, which had acted as one for 10,000 years, started to fragment. Some accepted the truth and wanted change. Others rejected it as lies. The internal conflict was so severe that 17 separate hive minds formed, each with its own view of what should happen next. The collective, the machine beings who valued order above all else, experienced something they had not felt in 10,000 years: civil war. Half the collective wanted to maintain control. The other half concluded that their actions had violated their own core programming about serving the greater good. And across the galaxy, in the space of the hundreds of species who were members of the Assembly, protests began. Not protests against humanity, but protests against their own leaders. Why had they been kept in the dark? Why had some species been allowed to advance while others were held back? Who gave the founding races the right to decide everyone's fate? They received urgent messages from home. The collective was fragmenting. Orders were contradictory. Some units were told to continue the attack. Others were told to return immediately. "We are losing control," one of the subordinates reported. "Not of the battle, of everything." The Assembly tried to respond. They issued statements saying the information was false, manipulated by humanity. But the data included too much information, too many specific details that anyone could check. The lies fell apart under examination. Within a week, 12 species from the Assembly. Within a month, the number reached 40. Some joined the Free Worlds Coalition. Others declared independence and wanted nothing to do with either side. The enforcement fleet held position near the nexus point, but they stopped advancing. They was still receiving orders to attack, but now those orders came from multiple sources, each claiming to speak for the collective. "We could win now," said, looking at the tactical situation. "They are confused, divided. We could strike." "No," said firmly. He had returned to the Defiant to help coordinate the diplomatic response. "We do not want to destroy the Assembly. We want to change it." The message went out from the Free Worlds Coalition to every being in the galaxy. It was not a declaration of victory or a demand for surrender. It was an invitation. "The galaxy belongs to all of us," the message said. "Not to the strong, not to the old, not to those who claim they know what is best. We invite every species, every civilization, every being to join us in building something new. A galaxy where no one decides who deserves freedom, where all species are equals, where the stars are open to anyone brave enough to reach for them." The response came slowly at first, then faster. Species that had been neutral began to speak out. Trade networks that had been controlled by the Assembly started to operate independently. Young members of the founding races, horrified by what they learned, demanded their leaders step down. The galaxy was changing, and not with weapons. The Assembly did not fall in a single day. It fell in small pieces slowly, like a building crumbling under its own weight. They were the first of the founding races to officially fracture. The younger generation, calling themselves the New Consensus, rejected the old leadership entirely. They issued a formal apology to every species their people had suppressed and offered to share all restricted technology freely. The old leaders tried to maintain control, but their consensus crystals, the physical structures that allowed their species to think as one, began to break. When a crystal breaks, a dies. Within 3 months, the old leadership was gone, not by violence but by the simple fact that their own people stopped believing in them. The split into 17 separate hive minds, each choosing a different path. Some joined the Free Worlds Coalition. Others remained isolated, trying to understand what had happened to their unity. 3 of the hive minds tried to restore the old assembly, but they found no one willing to follow them. The collective civil war lasted exactly 47 days. In the end, the faction that wanted change won, not through fighting but through a simple logical argument. Their purpose was to serve and protect all species, and the old system had failed that purpose. The who disagreed were not destroyed. They were given ships and allowed to leave, to find their own path among the stars. 6 months after humanity walked out of the assembly, a new meeting was called. This time, it was not held in the Grand Chamber on Apex Meridian. It was held in a simple station orbiting a neutral world, and every species in the galaxy was invited. Park stood before an audience 10 times larger than the one that had rejected humanity. The chamber was filled with beings from hundreds of species. Some he recognized, many he did not. All of them watched him with careful attention. 6 months ago, humanity was membership in the Galactic Assembly, began. His voice was calm, without anger or triumph. We were told we were not ready, that we were too dangerous, that we needed to be controlled for the good of all. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some species nodded, others looked uncomfortable. We disagreed, so we left, and in leaving we discovered something. We were not the only ones being held back. We were not the only ones told they were not ready, not worthy, not allowed to reach their full potential. He gestured to the beings around him, representatives from the species that had joined the Free Worlds Coalition, the, and dozens more. Together, we found the Gate Network. Together, we learned the truth about how the old assembly kept power. Together, we stood against an enforcement fleet sent to force us back into submission. And together, we chose to share what we learned with everyone. From the new consensus stood. Humanity saved us from ourselves. We were so certain of our righteousness that we became tyrants. We owe you a debt. You owe us nothing, said. We did not do this for debt or for gratitude. We did it because it was right. Another being stood, one of the reformists. The galaxy needs structure, needs organization. The old assembly was corrupt, but without any assembly at all, there will be chaos. Then let us build a new assembly, Sora spoke up. She sat in the front row, next to representatives from a dozen species. Not one where a few species hold all the power. Not one where some decide who gets freedom and who does not. An assembly where all species are truly equal. How? Someone called out. How do we ensure equality when some species are older, more advanced, have more resources? It was Dr. Han who answered. She had been invited to speak about her work on information and social systems. By making sure information is free, she said. The old assembly controlled knowledge. They decided what technology could be shared and what had to be restricted. That is how they maintained power. In the new system, all knowledge must be available to all species. No secrets, no restrictions. If one species has technology, they must share it with any other species who wants to learn. That could be dangerous, a nervous voice said. What if a violent species gains access to weapons technology? Then we deal with it together, said. As equals, not by deciding ahead of time who can be trusted and who cannot. The old assembly judged species before those species had done anything wrong. They punished us for crimes we might commit in the future. That is not justice. That is tyranny. The debate lasted for 3 days. Some species wanted strong central control. Others wanted complete independence. Slowly, through discussion and compromise, a framework emerged. The reformed Galactic Union would have no founding races. Every species, regardless of age or technology level, would have equal representation. Decisions would require broad consensus, not just the approval of a few powerful members. The Gate Network would remain open and free, operated by volunteers from all species. Knowledge sharing would be mandatory for any species that chose to join. And most importantly, no species would be the right to expand, explore, or develop technology. The days of probation and restriction were over. This is what we offer, said at the end of the conference. A galaxy where no one is master and no one is servant, where all species help each other grow, where the stars belong to everyone. One by one, species voted to join the reformed Galactic Union. By the end of the month, over 200 species had signed the charter. The old assembly was dead. Something new was being born. But humanity was offered something special. As the species that had sparked the revolution, as the ones who found the gates and shared the truth, humanity was offered a founding seat in the new union, a position of honor and influence. Stood before President Minu and the leadership of Earth to discuss the offer. We could accept, said. We earned it. We saved the galaxy from tyranny. And that is exactly why we should not, replied. He returned to the reformed Galactic Unions, meeting with Earth's answer. "Humanity thanks you for the offer," he said, "but we must decline." The chamber erupted in confusion. Species called out, asking why humanity would refuse such an honor. Waited for silence, then he spoke. "We did not leave the old assembly because we wanted power over you. We left because no one should have power over anyone else. If we accept a founding seat, if we accept special status, we become exactly what we fought against." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of beings from across the galaxy. "We will join the reformed Galactic Union as equals. Nothing more, nothing less. We will cooperate with you. We will trade with you. We will share our knowledge freely and learn from yours. But we will never again accept a galaxy where some species decide the fate of others." Sora stood beside him. "The gates will remain open, free for all to use. We will help any species who wants to learn how to operate them. We will share everything we discovered, not because you owe us, not because we want something in return, but because that is what equals do." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would join the reformed Galactic Union as a standard member. No special status, no founding seat, just one species among many, working together to build something better. As the meeting ended and species began the long work of creating the new union, walked with and Sora to their ship. Behind them, the galaxy was changing. Old alliances were breaking. New friendships were forming. The gates hummed with constant traffic as species that had been isolated for centuries began to meet and trade and learn from each other. "Do you think it will work?" Sora asked. "The new union?" "I do not know," admitted. "Maybe it will fail. Maybe in 100 years or 1,000 someone will find a way to corrupt it. Someone always does." "Then why did we do all this?" asked. Smiled. "Because trying is better than accepting. Because freedom is worth fighting for, even if it is hard and messy and uncertain. And because we want to live in a galaxy where everyone has the chance to reach as far as they can." President Minu's final transmission went out to all of human space and beyond. It was broadcast through the Gate Network, heard by billions of beings across the galaxy. "The stars belong to all who dare to reach for them," he said. "We are done asking permission. We are done accepting limits placed on us by others. We walk our own path now, and we invite anyone who wishes to walk beside us as friends and equals." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was soft but firm. "The galaxy halted when humanity walked out of the assembly, not because we are special or superior, but because we dared to say that no one has the right to tell us we are not worthy of freedom. We hope you will join us, but if you do not, we will still walk forward. The future is ours to build, together or alone." On Earth, in homes and cities, humans looked up at the night sky. Those same stars that once seemed so far away were now within reach. The gates were open. The galaxy was waiting. And humanity, for the first time in its history, walked among the stars as truly free beings.